You're listening to Dr. Troy Munson's Words of Radiance. Now here is Dr. Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson. We just covered fear. Fear was the 6th part in our series of basically climbing this ladder to complete spiritual wholeness or beingness. And while fear is the quintessential middle-of-the-road base emotion, of which all other feelings, and it's okay to call them emotions, like guilt and shame and apathy, that stem from fear itself. So what's interesting is we get here and we land right on desire. Now, desire has a couple different things with it. Desire is this wantingness, in essence, this craving. And in order to have a desire, you literally have to have the belief that you lack. And I believe that this thing that I'm desiring will give me fulfillment. And so therefore I'm now putting something out there due to a lack in here. So when we dissect desire, even in that just small little expose for the first 2 minutes of this particular podcast, it becomes very evident for those that are willing to hear that all of a sudden, like, that's right. It's an external drive from an internal misrepresentation or misperceived incompleteness within. So what's the fix? Is it more stuff out there? Well, no, I think we can definitely at least admit to ourselves in reality that no amount of getting is going to fill that void of desire or wantingness. So we're going to talk about how do we move beyond desire in just a few minutes, but let's expound a little bit more on this whole idea around desire. And at this point, desire has actually a fair amount of energy. There are many a people that can be quite desirous and achieve great things, what the world might consider great things, as lots of money and fame, but ultimately they're usually quite miserable. They may have many divorces. They may have at least wrecked marriages or relationships, and it may be that their lives are not all that awesome. And so it's interesting when we have some candid people that have made it big and they say things like, wouldn't it be nice if everybody could have $20 million, just to realize that it doesn't really do it for them. And I love some of the sages of the past that talk about, if you do happen to win the lottery, all you'll do is have your same miserable experience, yet in a bit nicer surroundings, which might seem more ideal to some people, but however, you'll get there and you realize that your unhappiness that you brought with you is still there. So where shame has very little energy, you almost can't even get out of bed. You'll find yourself sleeping for hours upon hours, even with guilt similarly. Apathy and grief, oh my goodness, talk about low energy states. And then fear can be almost quite high energy at times. And of course, desire, this wantingness, man, we're going to go out and get a good job. We're going to go out and find a spouse because we want sex, or we're going to go find a job because we're hungry and we want food, or we love chocolate and we're going to go search for it and find the very best, blah, blah, blah. We're going to find the best casino and the perfect slot machine. You know, it's this endless craving. And if you're around even sort of, how many pieces of chocolate have you eaten? How many pieces of pizza have you eaten? How many plates of nachos have I eaten in my life? How many times have we done those things that we really want to do because we feel like we're lacking day to day? And when we have it, We're satisfied for a few minutes, but then we're just left wanting all over again. So desire can lead to things like the experience of needs. I have needs, and you're not fulfilling them. But ultimately, these are artificial sources of satisfaction. It really sounds quite strange to even think about it that way, but let's just be honest. We're going to try to sterilize this as much as we can so that we can apply it to any aspect of our life. And of course, we could even go into the pathologic forms of chronic wanting. These endless things that we will go after: drugs, alcohol, pornography, gambling. I mean, it's anything and everything. And so, is it really going to end if we just keep getting and acquiring more and more things, more and more experiences? I literally had to have a heart-to-heart talk with myself when I knew I needed to give up carbohydrates, and I finally just said, you know what? Have you not had enough plates of nachos? My gosh. Is really one plate more nachos going to make it for you? Is that really going to do it? And I had to be honest and say, no, but they sure taste good. And I agreed. They do. It is a great experience. I hope you have your foods that you love just as much. But we would like to move beyond those things spiritually until all of a sudden we have this internal contentedness rather than this chronic dissatisfaction. And so we begin that process of going away from the insatiability, the frustration, the craving, the anger with it. And we begin to look a bit more deeply inside. And we move beyond the ego's ideas. And we say, you know what? I think I'm going to stop believing in all the things you keep trying to go after that's fulfillment. As the fleshly stuff begins to realize that this is not okay. And it's often these midlife crises that people get to, that they realize, my body no longer performs the way it once did or should or could. And now what am I going to do with myself? It's these things that so many artists have reported on, and I giggle when I think back to some of the songs that I remember that were kind of crass, but ultimately it's like, man, they really did know. They just kind of let it all hang out there for all of us to see, and we kind of knew, but maybe didn't know. And so after we go after these spiritual and internal development and upliftment kind of journey, that we begin to realize that, you know what? I think I am going to start moving away from that. And we begin to realize that a high percentage of the population is in this chronic state of wantingness, and whole civilizations have been stuck in this pathological cravings. I mean, we can look at the old Romans where they just kind of, whatever floats your boat, and let's watch people kill one another, and let's eat to excess and drink to excess and party insatiably. And as we begin to realize that is not something that I think I want anymore, we can try things like, I'm just going to stop doing it. And we yet again use this willpower of the ego, of the brain. And we realize that it rarely succeeds, if ever. And it doesn't stop this endless desire for self-gratification. And we really do see clearly, for perhaps the first time, that this is an internal problem rather than an external lack. And this internal problem, we begin to stare deeply within ourselves, and we begin to look, how can I do this different? And we begin to go to these 12-step programs with this idea of, I need to find something greater than myself. And then it, of course, leads to this idea that if only I would have known this sooner. If only these people in my life would have done what I said they were going to do. And even that leads down a dark road that doesn't go anywhere that we want it to go. And these commitments that we thought would make us happy and bring us peace don't. And then we begin to have this peace, this internal letting go that all of a sudden brings us more and more peace. And we realize that I do have power, and that power is the decision. And the first decision that I'm going to make is one of just general happiness. Could I let go of this thinking mind, this brain that incessantly chatters? Could I begin to not necessarily believe everything that it tries to throw at me? Could I also use perhaps the, and then what? Well, what if I don't get these pleasures? And well, then what? Well, then I'll just have this bored, unhappy, nobody existence, destitute, isolated, no fun life that is a complete and utter seemingly waste of time. And of course, ultimately, if that were true, then only people that were truly wealthy, that were truly beautiful, would only be happy. And yet, think about all the moments that you've been completely, utterly happy, laughing with friends at just giggling until your sides hurt. Did it take really any amount of money? Did it take any amount of looks to do that? Now, sometimes it may have involved drugs, but hopefully it didn't every time. But the times that you did it, that you were just genuinely happy. And perhaps you stand on a couple of those things. And then you begin to realize that this inner peace that is within me is not something of myself, little self, but something of the grand, great self, that essence that God put in all of us, that is bigger than all of us, thankfully, that is this inner radiance that shines from Him to us forever and ever. And we begin to have this joy that begins to come out, and we move away from this gettingness, this cravingness, this havingness. And perhaps maybe we go to doing. You know what? I feel really good when I'm helping others and loving on them and being selfless. And then it moves to this inner sense of beingness where all of a sudden the mind becomes way more quiet. And this being that you are, this radiant being of light and love and joy that is part of God, that will always be part of God. And you'll start to feel that inner peace and the inner happiness that leads way beyond anything that desire could even possibly give you. And now you have this experience that now you try to tell the next person and they have no idea what you're talking about because they haven't had it. And you can only tell it to them in only so many words because it's so difficult to tell them. And you say, you just got to experience it. Like all these great sages of old that basically are pointing the direction back towards your inner self. The Christ that was within you has always been there. And you begin to lead this fearless life. And now all of a sudden, you don't even mind that the body is there. It no longer becomes a me. And now you kind of see it as an it. It is kind of there, but you know it's not you. And it's not the big self. It's not the me. And now all of a sudden, these goals in your life that seemed like they were driven by desire are now actually simply reached via a decision. And now you've committed to a process. And you've chosen different things. And this decision now all of a sudden begins to run you. And people say, well, how did you achieve all this? And you look back and think, I'm not sure. I guess I just decided. Well, what steps did you take? What goals did you set? Did you just want it? And you think, no. I suppose you could use the word want. You could use the word I desired it. But more so, it was just this internal decision that I knew this was the direction that I needed to go. Because let's be real, the self doesn't actually fulfill anything. And I'm talking of the little self, the body, the little brain. It doesn't lead to any amount of satisfaction. It's only a tool to experience that which we are anyways. And when we realize how amazing we all are inside, and we start to have this great sense of ease, and we stop judging appearances and behaviors and people based on weird ideas, and we start seeing them truly as they are, as we are, then all of a sudden a decision becomes an obvious thing. I'm just going to decide to do this because this brings me great joy and peace to do. Yeah, but you're so good at riding a bike or building a mousetrap or making movies or cooking the most amazing foods. How do you do it? Or like myself, being a chiropractor or a nutritionist or a holistic functional medicine provider. How do you do it? I don't know. It's just a decision, I guess. And I just do. I'm just obedient to that which is within. And those that need to hear what I have, come. I'm not for everyone. If you're listening to this, this is for you. Aren't you glad it was for you? Maybe just making a decision yourself, rather than being led around like a bull with a ring through its nose because it's painful, and the ego is just leading you around from desire to desire, from craving to craving, from wantingness to wantingness. You just simply decide one day to stop. I don't think I'm going to listen to you anymore. In fact, I think I'm going to pull the ring out of the nose and toss it away and just decide to be for a while and find out where that gets me. So I hope that's helpful. That's kind of a big one, a heavy topic on desire, but it's one that we need to hit square on because it can leave people in a state of wanting for quite some time. So let's move through it quickly. Let's not let those pitfalls and the shiny objects of this world lead us astray for too long. Let's enjoy them in a little bit better way. It's okay to have those things, by the way. Just don't let them be a driving force. Let's make decisions rather than simply cravings. Until next time, I'm Dr. Troy Munson.